Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everybody, welcome to my tier list for the jungle in patch 10.4 in SMITE. You never could have guessed it would have been in SMITE. But yeah, just to go over it, this is purely a ranked tier list, no competitive thought process going on here whatsoever. The rankings will be purely based on rank, and S tier means that you're very likely to carry that game, or at the very least, the game won't be lost by you. And D tier is you basically need your teammates to carry you, but the character is still at least playable in that role. So we will start with Achilles. I feel like Achilles is kind of neither here nor there in jungle. He can definitely pop off if you get fed, because Achilles, when you get fed, you get the passive bonus, you get your 2 bonus, you get a power build going, and you can really one-shot people with this character. But to me, it's like a big what if. You can fail ganks pretty hard sometimes on this god. So I think he's a little teammate dependent in the sense that your teammates need to be there. They need to be landing CC for you so you can get your CC. There's also a lot of answers to Achilles as well. I'm not a big proponent on this character, to be honest. I know people like him a lot, think he's solid, but for now I'll put him in B. Obviously, I will be moving characters around as we go through. That would be Arachne. Yeah, Arachne's like C. You can definitely carry early mid with Arachne, but the problem with the character is that she just always falls off. Always. Like, you can abuse the most OP build in existence, and Arachne will always fall off because she needs to stick in people's faces for too long, and she doesn't have the benefit of, say, a Bakasur AoE cone, right? And she doesn't have the benefit of the CC immunity, built-in CC immunity while she's doing that, right? She needs to rely on a beads or waste a item slot on a Magi's. Well, obviously, it's not necessarily a waste in that case, but I just realized I skipped past Ao Kuang. I think you guys know the gist of Arachne by now. Win early game, lose late game. But hey, it's ranked, so you might be able to win in 10 minutes if you play hard enough. Ao Kuang S tier easily. Basically, a similar idea to Arachne a little bit. They need to be in people's faces, but the thing is, Ao Kuang has an invis dash. He has a lot of base damage on his abilities, and he can go attack speed or ability based, and either one does a quintillion damage. He does so much damage that we've seen him be able to shred through even Vaman's ultimate with his 2, basically. So yeah, the character he be a bit of a problem. In general, again, like Arachne, you guys know Ao Kuang by now. One of the highest pop-off potentials in the entire game. Not the best early game, but once he gets a few items going, he's basically impossible to 1v1, and especially if he has his beads on him, and then of course having the execute on top of that. There's a lot of counters to that execute, but yeah, I think he's still definitely good enough for S tier. A Wheelish is like, I'd say she's like A tier, just because her early mid is so insanely potent and she's able to get so much farm on the map. Again, I think she's an example of another one that falls off a bit late game. Don't get me wrong, you can one-shot people late game, but she is a little stubby. That's definitely a problem with the character. She is stubby. She needs to be in their faces to get that 2 off. So that's basically her only real issue. And you don't want to rely too much on the ultimate either. If you're trying to gimmick your opponents because they have a bunch of leaps, or if you have an easy knockup on your team, but then you get behind and you can't really perform those combos very well, or punish people for using their leaps in your face, yeah, it can be a bit of a problem. So there's definitely holes in her plan, whereas like there's no holes in Ao Kuang's plan. He just one-shots you. Yeah, I think she's definitely A, but she can definitely carry. She can definitely carry you. Baka, same idea. Maybe better than Ao Kuang. It kind of depends on the players you're playing against. How much farm you're able to get as Baka, because frankly, neither of them are amazing gankers or anything. But Baka has more gank potential, and I think that's why he's a little better than Ao Kuang. He's definitely not an early game god. He definitely needs at least one item, at least a golden blade to really gank people. But once he gets that item, he's able to gank people. Whereas Ao Kuang really needs his teammates to do the heavy lifting in the early game in order to get successful ganks off. Baka can definitely, at least he has the slow, he has the cone AoE, and he can basically free farm all game with his 2. Well, with the help of his 2, of course, golden blade is a great asset to that farming as well. So yeah, I would say Baka's just great. He's just a great ranked god, just to carry brain dead carry ranked games. And also, I think for sure he's just harder to mess up than Ao Kuang. I mean, you can make bad decisions on Baka, but there's a bigger range of bad decisions you can make on Ao Kuang, that's for sure. And especially if you mess up your early game as Ao Kuang, it can be hard to come back. If your enemy jungler's good, they can punish you pretty hard, invade you a bit. With Baka, that doesn't really happen. Basically, unless you're not like just turbo-inting under tower over and over again, you're going to carry games as Baka. Best stat, I would say, is like B. As much as I hate admitting that, I hate this god so much. I don't even think she was that interesting to begin with, but they took an already basic character and made her like even more basic. But at the end of the day, she does a lot of damage. Her ganks are solid. She's extremely easy mechanically. The ultimate comes up every single team fight. It's gonna burn beads every single fight. She has a lot of things that makes her solid. It's just she doesn't have a lot of pizzazz, but actually she uses the current builds really solidly. It's just she just becomes an ult bot late game though, and that can be a bit of a problem. She really like her basic attack chain. That's something they could change on the character to make her a lot better. Give her a better basic attack chain. And I think she could box out a little bit better if she had a better basic attack chain. If her 2 maybe ticked a bit faster, little things like that. They could improve the character for sure. But she definitely has potential. It's just like if you're in a Wheelix one trick, you can do work. If you're best at one trick, not so much. You know what, actually, I just looked. Athena, I think is still good enough. I think she's like probably going to be the back of B, in the same boat as Achilles, where it's like if you get things going, oh, it's going to be great, but it can be a bit of a big if you can get things going. And like Bastet's the other way around, where it's like it's actually pretty easy to get things going, but it's like maintaining that and bringing that into the late game just doesn't really happen as often. But these guys, it's like either you stomp or you get stomped really. But that's ranked, right? Like if you play your god the best you can and you're a decent player, you're probably going to win games with these gods. But yeah, like I just said, same idea as Achilles though. You have to go this build that makes you super easy to kill, and since you're supposed to be a tanky character, you're a lot slower than some of the other assassins out there, and you will die very quickly if you try to get your combos off and you're not ahead. So that's their one weakness, but they can definitely carry though. And obviously they bring a lot more CC to the table than a regular assassin would. At least in most situations. Cabrakan, is he even really worth putting on the list anymore? I really don't see this character in any role whatsoever, really. But he can one-shot people, though. But I do think it's like an Arachne situation where it's like you're preying on not-so-great players to get it done. And what, you gotta also ask at this point, what's really Cabrakan bringing? He has to blink on people and get in melee range. He doesn't just blink and then he has like a short-range ability that he can use. No, he needs to blink and get in basic attack range after that blink nerf that happened at the start of the season. So that hurt him a lot, but the current build that he can go, I haven't actually tried it, but you could go like full penetration, right? And like a Rod of Two Hoodies as well with a Polynomicon. You could do a lot of damage with this character. But I think because I'm about to talk about Arachne, that's why I said she. I think he's a little less autopilot than Arachne, even though he is easy. I think your decision making on Cabrakan needs to be really like rock solid, no pun intended. Yeah, I would say Arachne's like a little more of a sure thing. Like you can really get stuff going in the early game, just can't really bring it to late game. Cabrakan's the same idea where you can get really, really, really fed if the enemy disrespects you completely and plays horribly. But that can happen in ranked. That can totally happen in ranked, and it's not really up to your team to lift you up. Right, you can be completely self-sufficient and potentially carry games. It's just a big if. Is Camazotz the same way, or is he up in B? It's just the only thing this character does is damage, and then like every time he comes into the meta, his damage gets reduced again, and then they buff him again. He comes into the meta, they nerf the damage again. And after I think he actually got hurt pretty bad by the power scaling nerfs to all the healing in the game. That really didn't help him out too much, and like sustaining the jungle is not really a problem right now, so it doesn't really matter that he has all this free sustain. It's funny when Camazotz is meta, everyone's like, he's just a better Thanatos. And then when Thanatos, for instance, right now is better, everyone's like, well, Camazotz is the worst Thanatos. But it is true. Yeah, like just all he brings to the table is damage. It's potentially less than Cabrakan. Cabrakan, I think Arachne is better at stomping lower level players just because they're locked down. Not even lower level players, someone just having a bad game, someone who's out of position or whatever. She's better at capitalizing on those. But I would say his ultimate makes him better than Cabrakan at least, because at least he has a way to protect himself and deal damage at the same time. But I think Arachne's better at singling out targets. Chalk Jungle we'll just put in D for Sino, of course. Your team needs to carry you, and they do just that in the SPL. But Chalk Jungle, I mean, it actually does have some merit, because he just does a ridiculous amount of damage, and so you get ahead, you can win. But I do think he brings the least carry potential out of all of these, and has nowhere near the utility of like an Achilles execute or Athena ultimate and taunt in fights. So yeah. I think he's easy D. Chang'e, just because it's me, I still love Chang'e jungle. I don't think it's good. I do think it's D, but I do think it's actually playable. I played it a couple times this season, and you can really surprise people with how much damage you can do. Certainly not in the early game, but basically you play the early mid to like have sort of have meandering jungle pressure. You know, you're probably gonna get invaded if you're against a good jungler, but you know, it's actually not that bad. Her clear is solid. Her sustain is solid. Her ganks are actually okay with the ultimate. They're actually really not too bad. But it's the same idea as Chalk, where it's like not too much carry potential, but you do end up with like a Chalk has the ultimate late game, Chang'e has the ultimate and heals late game. So I mean, at the end of the day, you're still getting a little something out of it. Daji, I don't know where I want to put Daji because she is very consistent at what she does. But it's just like the effectiveness of that changes with every given patch. And what I mean by that is just like, well, the combos are very easy, very brain dead. It's a lot like Bastet, except the ultimate is easier and harder to counter at the same time. It's less predictable than a Bastet, potentially, because Bastet can do it over walls and forces out beads individually, but like you can miss Bastet hard, and you have, at least you have with Daji, you have 3 chances to hit the chains, right? So there's that. And I do think her main combo is better than Bastet's. I don't know if that puts her in A at the moment though, but she can yeah, if we're talking about ranked, I mean, she can definitely carry though. And I think her damage is wild enough to where she beats out Bastet in terms of like raw late game damage. But I do think since Wheelix's farm potential is a little better, Dashi is good too, because she can, you know, 3 over walls and stuff. So that makes her solid. Erlang, I actually don't think is D tier. People really rag on this god, and for good reason. He doesn't have... He has a solid build right now. The thing is, the reason he's in C is because he counters a few things. He can counter healers. He has some niche matchups as well, where the taunt actually could come in clutch with the damage mitigation. But they did cap damage mitigation. I don't think I've tried her along this patch quite yet. But I do remember last patch, his build was totally fine, and his build has remained basically the same. He can be a real healer killer, potentially, but he needs to not get behind, and that can be properly difficult as they're along, because his jungle clear is not very good. His ganks early are not very good at all. They could probably give this character the knockback now, and then nerf other things about the character later, because his damage is pretty pitiful until he gets his items online. So basically, you need to have someone disrespect you. Again, another one of these where it's like you need to have the enemy team disrespect you a bit so you can get a kill early, get ahead, and then you can actually steamroll from there, because he is really hard to deal with if he gets ahead, genuinely. And he does have some counters. You could like last pick this character into Afro. Hell's not so good because of the cleanse. She can cleanse the root. Since you don't have, you know, be crazy if you had a knockup to follow that up with afterwards after the cleanse ends. Fenrir is really solid, but I do think he is the most... I guess he's S tier caliber, just because the pop off can be so insane. Same idea as Ao Kuang, where it's like things can definitely go wrong for Fenrir, and I think more things can go wrong for Fenrir just because he relies on 2 movement abilities, right? So there's a lot of things in the game that can counter that, and he's actually rather predictable as well. There's plenty of cleanses in the meta as well. Plenty of very tanky gods. Plenty of gods who can save other characters. You know, I'm talking about like Horus, of course. Characters like Vamana that he can't do anything to, unless the Vamana's already behind. But, you know, he's still Fenrir, right? He jumps on you for 500 damage. He basic attacks you for 400 damage. You try and dash away, and then he threes on top of you for 1200 damage, and you're dead. So he can definitely, especially with the rune, the changes to his 2 that have yet to be touched or nerfed in any sort of way, really makes in hands. He can 1v1 some hunters, especially now that crit has sort of gone to the sideline a little bit. He can actually 1v1 hunters for a significant portion of the game. It's actually really impressive what you're capable of doing on this character. But again, like I said, he's got a lot of counters. If you pick this god too early, you're gonna get some counter matchups on the enemy team, I would imagine. Is Hubwa better than Ao Kuang? It's a tough call. If he's better than Ao Kuang. I think Well, I think Hebo gets going... Hubwa, sorry. Dude, I keep on mixing the names up. I think Hubwa gets started a little bit quicker. I think his early game is a little bit better. It's certainly not good, but I think it's better than Ao Kuang's. And I think, like with Ao Kuang, if you're against a really solid mid-jungle duo, both their gods are good and the players are good, I think they can really punish you early game. But on Hubwa, that's not really a thing, because the jungle clear is very solid. He gets around the jungle very quickly. And his ganks are okay. It's not as bad as Ao Kuang, though, is the thing. I think his ganks early are a little better than Ao Kuang's. Does again, needs a little bit of help. needs a little bit of assistance to get off the ground. But once he does, I think the pop-off potential is a lot higher on Hubwa, because he could just blink, ult your backline, and they are 100% dead, and they have to run away. And then after they run away, he threes them from a million miles away, and they die because he has Rata Tahuti. So he can feel very unfair to play against. Hunbats, I would say it's like a better Daji, better a Wheelish though. Yeah, I would say he's better. He's better than the Wheelish, I would say. I think that's just because the ultimate comes up more late game. I think Wheelish does what Humbats wants to do better in the early and mid. That's like get around the map really quickly, execute really solid ganks, and do a billion trillion damage so that people can't contest you whatsoever. I think Wheelish does do that better, but Humbats has the padding of, hey, once it comes teamfight time, he's got that ultimate, and it is always a problem so long as it's placed well and timed well. So it's a little dependent on the player as well, on the Humbats player. And again, you got to make sure there's not too many cleanses on the enemy team, not too many ways to get away from it, too many immunities or anything like that, or too much retaliation even, where they can just like play right through it either. But yeah, I think the potential is there just to carry a ton of ranked games, literally with just the ultimate and your in hands, basically, because he does so much damage with that trans build. It's pretty nasty. Kali is kind of nowhere right now, I feel like, but I think, because we're talking ranked here, I think she's at least a B, because you can definitely still carry games with Kali. Her build is kind of weird right now, but the Kins change that happened early in the year, that's been helping her through and through, because I've played the character a few times now, and like every time I buy Kins, it's literally like I just bought what am I even trying to say? Okay, literally all I can think of is when I buy Kins on Kali, it feels like I'm buying a premium pass to the pearly gates. I don't even know what that means. Help me. But yeah, basically, I think the character can pop off really hard, but she takes even longer to get off the ground than like Hubwa, Ao Kuang. And you really want a character that can both be effective, can at least hold their own in the early game, if not stomp in the early game, and then translate that into a strong late game. And Kali doesn't really do that. And again, like Fenrir, she has a lot of situations where she can get hard countered. Well, even like a thing like a fortified shell, which anyone can buy at any time. It's not even character specific. That can be very rough. They might, if they give her the Vomit treatment and have it that she can go through walls in her ultimate, that actually might help her, because walls are actually a big problem for this character, as I found out. Playing against Maui last year, that was unfun. Loki, not so much. I know I came out against this rework last year a little bit, but I actually don't hate the character. I think he's pretty fun. I think I mentioned that in that video. But I don't think he's great right now. His damage just takes way too long to come out. I mean, look at these gods up here. You got Baka, who's critting you 3 times to kill you. Hubwa, who's pressing 3 and 4 to kill you. Ao Kuang, who presses 2 and holds left click, kills you. Fenrir with the combo I said earlier. You guys get the idea. They all do their damage way faster than Loki, unless Loki gets ahead. I think he's maybe the best, like, stomping, singling out and stomping not so great players. Loki's probably the best at that, because they if players aren't using their relics properly against a Loki, they're being too trigger happy with their movement abilities, or they just hold on to it for too long and he just gets a raw ultimate off. Yeah, Loki can absolutely one-shot people. It's actually pretty criminal how much damage this character can do when he's ahead. It's just a big if, though. But I do think he can hold his own a little bit better than, say, Arachne, because he has an AoE stun. It's not the best stun in the game, obviously, but I think he can put in a little bit more work than Arachne, potentially. Oh, Mercury. Mercury might still be S tier. It's hard to say. I think this character is just, like I said in my one-trick video, which was last year, it became... That pick became... I'm actually omnipotent, frankly, because of how good that was the pick. That pick was, I should say. But it's just, I think he's probably top of A. It's a big if you're gonna hit that ultimate. But the thing is, the pop off is higher than Hunbats. It's like a playoff of Hunbats, basically. Like, the ultimate is harder to hit, and it's even if you hit a good one, it's not gonna be. It doesn't have the same potential that a Hunbats ultimate can have. And the pop-up potential is like better than a Fenrir, but equal to an Ao Kuang, and like you're less likely to get there as Mercury than you are on Fenrir, and able to get all that damage off. And of course, the built-in lifesteal on Fenrir is a big reason why that those in-hand pop-up potentials work, right? It's because you have that insane amount of lifesteal on top of that. Mercury doesn't really have that benefit. although the damage can be crazy. Now with crit being nerfed, you really have to wait a long time for that damage to really start getting crazy. But yeah, for Mercury's farming, I mean, Golden Blade's still in the game, right? He can farm really well with Golden Blade, gets around the map pretty quickly, so he can actually, even if he gets behind early, he can actually still farm up and come back in the late game. So I think he's definitely a solid choice, but I wouldn't put him in the best choice. Mulan, I don't think is good enough anymore for the jungle. Y'all know I love some jungle Mulan, but I don't think she's good enough. Nem, on the other hand, definitely is. I think like her and Fenrir like trade places depending on the match, because well, the thing is, Nem ultimate is more effective more of the time, because like it's never a bad thing to just strip a bunch of protections off of somebody, especially in the support aura meta we have going on right now. So, but she does struggle to get off the ground more than Fenrir does. But if I have Alkwang up here, I need to have Nemesis up here as well, because they both struggle to get out of the early game a little bit. And Fenrir doesn't, but I feel like Fenrir is, he's more predictable. He gets shut down easier by counter matchups, whereas Nem just like, everyone's a counter matchup to her. She doesn't like having any sort of CC on her whatsoever. She always needs to beads pretty much every single fight. But once she does beads, she just goes absolutely crazy with the crit build, which of course, as I mentioned with the Mercury one, did get nerfed. But I think Nem is a little bit better at abusing it right now. And it's also just because like, okay, Merc Dash, it's better CC than anything Nem has in her kit, right? But he stands in place to do that, and you can't do that late game. Nemesis, on the other hand, can do everything she wants to do in one huge flowing combo that's not difficult to Aegis or anything, right? But easier to Aegis than a Merc combo. I mean, I would say they're like about the same. So I would say she has that more utility as well with that ultimate. Not as high as Fenrir again, but that ultimate has the predictability aspect and the counter match aspect to it. So I would say Nem's a little better. Nike, do we even really want to put Nike on here? Yeah, I think she's solid enough, but I really wouldn't go Scott. I still, even I will admit Shunga Jungle is worse, but yeah, Nike I'll just put down here. She can do work, but she needs her team to help her get off the ground, and she needs her team to follow up off of her slow and stuff, because she definitely can't do all the damage herself. She does a lot of damage, but she can do like half of a squishy's health quickly, and then she needs someone else to come in and help her, or else she's going to die instantly. Odin, would you really count Odin? I don't think I would count Odin at this point. Osiris, I think, has a bit of potential. If I have Erlong here, I would put Osiris here, maybe over Kabrakan. Yeah, because he has the built-in anti-heal. He doesn't even have to build any anti-heal in his build, really. He can just go more of a hybrid build than Erlong, who definitely needs to buy a little bit of Toxic Blade in his life. But I do think the singling out of Loki and Arachne, like if we're talking about stomping not so great players, then Loki and Arachne are a lot better at that. But Osiris is good at it too. He's really good at singling people out, good at baiting people into 1v1s that they can't possibly win, because frankly Osiris is still really good at 1v1ing a lot of characters in the game. Mostly with his 3. So it's also a lot on you as the Osiris. You need to be really good at Osiris to play this character right now. But yeah, he has that potential in the late game with the ultimate, which is going to not only chunk players, but make them not heal. That's the most important thing. Make them not heal whatsoever. That's literally not a mechanic in the game anymore. You can't stack anti-heal over 80% on people anymore, but Osiris can bring that. Yeah, and again, if he gets disrespected, he can take 1v1s against most characters on this list and win it. Until, unless they're ahead, or, until the late game against some of these gods. Pele, I think, is next. Pele, probably top of A, bars. Yeah, she doesn't have the CC that Mercury does. Obviously, she has the knockup, right? But I can't just sit here and say that the straight little knockup is better than a Merc Dash, right? And I think Merc Dash is better CC for ganks overall. Other than in the late game, obviously. In the late game, Merc Dash can get you killed pretty easily if you're not careful. And obviously, Merc Ultimate, better CC than Pele's Ultimate, which is just as slow. But yeah, still, this character can stomp so unbelievably hard. But I don't think it's quite hard enough to be S. Like, she doesn't have the utility of a Fenrir ultimate, and she doesn't do quite as much damage as these characters. She does do more in the mid game, like in the mid game, well, early mid even. Early mid, she crushes a lot of these characters. That's actually something she's really good at, is just getting these guys behind and then just stomping them from there. In the movement speed, getting around the jungle to keep her farm up, that's good too, like a Mercury in that regard. Oh man, Ratatoskr. I don't know. I don't know where to put this god. He's a bruiser, he's an assassin all in one. But I feel like the character just isn't that great. He actually can. Yeah, I think he's good enough in like B because he has that CC and the damage is actually really easy to apply. I just think his 2 is really bad, honestly. I know a lot of people have problems with his ultimate as well, but for me it's mostly the 2 just because it takes so long to come out. And of course you want to do it while the enemy is stunned, naturally. But, DR is a thing as well, so that can reduce your stun time after you use your ultimate because the ultimate applies a DR. So the stun lasts for a short amount of time. So like it's kind of like, well, I just screwed myself over making the stun a shorter time and not being able to get my 2 out all the way. He does do a lot of damage though, and the knockup is super helpful in fights. The stun when you get the yellow acorn, really solid. I definitely don't think you should go crit anymore in this god because of the crit nerfs. I would say he's probably more reliable than those gods, these 2 here. But like the thing is, he's not like guaranteed a beads with like a Bastet ultimate, and his ganks early are about as good as Bastet's, but I think his early ganks are a little worse than Bastet's, especially because he really relies on getting that yellow acorn to make sure he can get the stun every single time that weird 3 ability comes out. Now, Serket is definitely S tier. I would say she's definitely S tier. She brings utility and that insane damage that we expect from all of these S tier characters all in one, as well as crazy mobility. Like equal, if not more, because it's more if you're against a healer, but I would say it's like about the same if you're against no healers. Similar damage to Nemesis, although Serket can actually burst harder and do so earlier as well. Nem really needs to get like 5 items at least. Serket can start really like one-shotting people like 3 or 4 items. I feel like she's a lot like Ao Kuang, except she has the utility of the ultimate on top of all that. So I would say she's all the way up here in my opinion, and she farms decently. I don't think she has the best farm in the game, but like ever since they added that cleave to her basic attack chain, she's gotten a lot better at farming. So yeah, I would put her up here. And like the thing is, like other crit items got touched, but Deathbringer did not. That's the most important thing I think about Serket right now. Is like crit around the board got nerfed, but then like the one item that she buys did not, and like her passive crit didn't get nerfed either. So she's still just one-shotting people with her 2-1 combo. Or at the very least, she just burns beads with that combo over and over again. And you can't catch her because she has a dash and a leap. So yeah, I think because of the utility I would just put her here, but a little more execution heavy than say like a Baka, so I'll put her below Baka. But on the day, right, like yeah, they can both, I think Serket and Baka could be equally responsible for winning you a ranked game. And like she can't really get put behind too far to the point where she can't function. Oh, I actually skipped Raven. Yeah, Raven is okay. Yeah, we're sort of in this category. Like, he's another one of these gods who really the only thing he can do is single out weak targets. And he does bring a really solid one-shot to the late game, but I think his damage on the whole is lower than Loki's. But I think his late game's good enough to where he's better than Arachne. Because he can, like, if he doesn't get too far behind, bro, he really one-shots people, especially with Erendite. He really genuinely one-shots people late game. If you just ult 1 somebody, ult 1-3, yeah, they're gone, by the way. I think he has that potential behind him, but I think Loki's a little bit better in like the mid game, I would say. Loki actually I think might lose to him late game though. In a 1v1 fight, I think Raven wins it all day, obviously. Set. Okay, I'm definitely gonna have to go through the gods again. The number one reason I keep missing gods is because my mic is right in front of me and it's like right over the god list. So maybe I'm like scrolling up and down weirdly for you guys, but it's just me putting the mic in my face like an idiot. Set is still Set, I think. I think he's definitely still playable for sure. He does a really decent amount of damage, and he can still build a lot of counter items. He can still build a little bit of bruiser. He can still build a little bit of anti-heal. I think he just doesn't abuse things quite as well as the other gods. His Golden Blade abuse is actually pretty good. But, it's just the fact that he has to try and sit back there with the Guardian auras on, and he's not really bursting people, and he he struggles to play through Aegis and stuff. He struggles to play through cleanses because he really relies on that slow to get anything done. His one's slow to get anything done. Fortifying Shell, again, like Kali, can really make him struggle. But I think he's more reliable than Achilles and Athena, but not more reliable than a Ratatoskr. Especially because his farming is good, but his early ganks are just okay, especially into a lot of the meta characters who tend to be a little bit safer. They're either safe or they do insane amounts of damage in CC. So, yeah, Set can struggle to turn on that with the current items that he's able to use, I think. Now it's time. Now it's finally time for the Seisano. I think he's definitely S tier this season. He brings all the things to the table that these gods do with singling targets out, and he has the best team fight assassin ultimate in the game. So yeah, I think this character is great, and he has the mobility of Serket on top of that. I think Serket brings a little bit more, but I think because he can definitely cringe gank very easily at like level 2 or 3. His level 5 is solid, and then once he gets Transcendence online, it's over. This character starts one-shotting everything on the map. It's pretty crazy how much damage he can actually... He's always actually been doing decent damage to tanks, but this season especially, he's actually able to do a lot of damage to tanks as well, which is surprising. He's one of the few gods who can really like tower dive a soul laner and like live to tell the tale. Like Ao Kuang, Fenrir, Baka, they're the same story. Serket as well, because of the 2 damage ult. Well, yeah, because of the ultimate. And yeah, I think the way he gets in and out of fights is a lot stronger than what Hebo can bring to the table. If I called him Hebo again. If Hubwa doesn't get ahead, Susano has a way easier way. If he's the same level of like behind, he can get it in and out of fights a lot more easily, especially considering the range on that ultimate. Yeah, I think he brings like similar damage. Not quite as extreme damage as Ao Kuang and Hubwa, but he brings way more utility with that ultimate. But I think Serket brings the same amount of burst, but the utility of both it being crazy hard CC on a single target as well as the anti-heal on a single target, I think Serket's just a little bit better because of that. But Susano can definitely make people surrender faster. I've learned that this season. Thanatos, ooh. Yeah, he's just nuts with the current build. He just deals so much damage, and it's extremely hard to deal with. And he does... The important thing is, it's like, you have decent early game gods, right? Like, you have your Wheelishes, Pele, Bastet, I guess. There's actually not a lot of good early game junglers. But Thana is like the early game jungler. He does so much damage. If you ever disrespect him, if you ever try and get in his face, he's just going to death scythe you, heal back all the damage you just dealt, and then kill you. He's one of the few characters where his heals did not get affected at all because it's all percent based heals. So he actually sustains through the jungle better. He gets, well, the raw death scythes. Well, on minions, he can actually sustain up even more. He does get punished really hard by some things because obviously he doesn't have a movement ability, so he's more susceptible to CC, and he can get killed in his ultimate pretty quickly if you're not careful. So I think because like his pop-off potential is like, yeah, I would say it's even better than Pele's, just because of the cooldown reset. Obviously the healing isn't as strong as Pele's, but like you could just land on somebody, one-shot them, like basic, scythe basic, and then 3, and then basic again, and they're dead. 100% they're dead. Same idea as a Pele, but the thing is now your cooldown's reset, you received a pretty decent burst heal. A burst heal, not something you have to, you don't have to like heal off of abilities like you do with Pele. So this has been going on way too long. I just looked at the time. I'm just going to leave Thana there. Yeah, because he brings a little bit less, well, he does have the execute late game, which can come up huge, especially against tanks. Yeah, I'll put him above Fenrir. I'll go a little bit faster now. Thor, I think, can be inconsistent. And that's mostly down to the ultimate. Like, it's either you get the really good dunk on someone or you don't. But he is another one of those assassins who's really good at singling people out. And but the thing is, like, the ultimate, to me, it just kind of pales in comparison to Susano's, because it's like, it's half the size. It's a stun, not a knockup, so it's not as good of a CC. It doesn't do as much damage on an individual basis. And basically, you need to full combo someone with the ultimate to make it a worthwhile ultimate, because otherwise you're just going one right out of there, right? So I think there's a lot of situations where this character really doesn't work when it comes to late game, but in the early and mid game, he is so hard to deal with because his range is insane on the wall and the hammer, so that can be very hard to deal with, and his damage is pretty much unmatchable until you start getting some items online, unless you're Thanatos. There are ways to outplay Thor for sure, but they're like few and far between when it comes to actually like the top tier. So he maybe he's like, to me, I think he's the king of A tier, just because I think he really does fall off in that late game. Like he can one shot people like a Thanatos can, but like the thing is he one shots someone and then he does nothing. Like Thanatos can get the cooldown reset and he can still be a threat, bars, and like he doesn't have the same utility as like I pointed out. Ultimate Fenrir ultimate on somebody, a Prot Shred from Nem, Execute from Akwong, 3/4 of your health from Hubwa, a full team knockup from Susano, stuff like that. To me, it's just like, because he's lacking in those things, and he doesn't even really make up for it in terms of damage late game. Yeah, I think he's just A. I don't think he's quite S tier. Should I put Poseidon Jungle on here? I think Poseidon Jungle is good enough. I'll give it a quick rundown. It's just because, you know, Whirlpool Kraken, same idea as Chang'e, except it's way more reliable and a lot more damage early on. I don't think you need to be carried to play it. I think it's a little more consistent than Camazotz. No, actually, I think he's more like B, yeah. Yeah, I would say he's better than D, he's better than Set. Better than Rat, even. Yeah, I would put Poseidon up here. Yeah. Honestly, top of B. I would put him at the top of B. There's just so much that character can do in the jungle role, and his farming is really good as well. It's just like basically, if you get behind though, you're so done. Like you are not doing anything that game. But the thing is, if your team can hold on for you, you can always just crack in someone late game and they will die. So that's definitely a big benefit. Oh wait, I completely missed Naja because this is his old model. Sorry, bro. Naja is tough because there's a lot of matches where like he's literally like you press one button and that's either going to win you or lose you the game. I don't really like coin flip characters like that, but Naja is still one of the most fun characters in the game, to be honest, other than like the fact that you need to hit your ultimate or you're going to lose your team the game. And he could really do like 800 900 damage with a sash late game. Like the power scaling on that is ridiculous, and I think you should really actually go trans on Naja, and I think you can actually fit a Deathbringer into that build as well. And oh boy, if you get an ultimate on someone, they are actually going to get one shot. Yeah, ring bounce is really hard to deal with as well, because it basically forces the enemy team to be not as close as to their allies as they would like, and if they disrespect it, then they're all getting slowed and your team gets a free engage off of it potentially, or at the very least they have to back up and try and sustain off of it. But yeah, brawlers, you don't really see brawlers too much in this meta. It's not the most ideal item you want to be going, so yeah, I don't think he's the best like anti-heal character, although he could definitely apply it. I think like these guys have better pop-off potential, although I do think his singling out, the way he can single out targets and the way he can 1v1 people with his 2-on, obviously with the crit chance, it makes him a little bit better than these two characters, because I think it's his presence is about equal, as long as you hit everything, his presence is about equal to these guys. In the early and mid game, and then he outshines them in the late game. But I think Humbats has more potential for that, Merc has more potential for that, and so on as you go up. Yeah, I love tier, and I played tier jungle back in the day. Don't think that's good enough, but Vamn jungle, on the other hand, I think is solid. I think this isn't really the place you want to play this character. I see Vamn jungle get played a decent amount, but you're basically just playing for late game, and in my opinion, in ranked, you really want to have like, look at these A tier and above characters, bro. Like, they can just gank you over and over and over again, and you just have to sit there and take it. Vamn, his teammates. He needs his teammates to already be winning lanes in order for ganks to really work. I mean, he farms decently. He farms decently for sure. But yeah, that late game is so crazy that it can be worth it. I think that makes him better than a Set. Although Ratatosker, behind Poseidon. Behind Poseidon, I think is fair, because Poseidon can do more early, and his late game is really solid. But yeah, they both run into the same problem where it's just like they get shut down, and then the pick looks like a joke. So obviously Vamn is hard to shut down, but he's definitely easier to shut down in the jungle than he is in the soul lane. I'll say that much, because in the soul lane you're building tankier, you can hide under your tower, and you're not getting like you can get proxied obviously in the soul lane, but it's not like you can get your jungle camps invaded as a soul laner and have it be the end of the world. So Tsukuyomi, has potential in ranked, but it's actually the same sort of issues in competitive that it is in ranked, which is funny. It's like you just have to dive in with your ultimate and hope it one-shots somebody, because if it doesn't, then you're just screwed. But in the early mid game, he's another one of those gods that can really make the enemy team F6 for sure, because you can just get so far ahead. Because the poke is really insane in the mid lane when you're doing your classic mid jungle 2v2. The poke is so crazy, he can really chunk people out and force them back if they don't respect his range. And the ganks are okay. The ganks are okay. It's just the two can really get stopped by so many supports and even some soul laners out there. If they just hold on to their CC, they stop the two. They mostly stop the gank. But, if he holds on to his ultimate, holds on to the ultimate for the right time, he can still eke out kills for sure. So I think that puts him... I would put him, like, below Bastet, just because he brings, like, the same sort of early mid presence as them. But I think Ratatasker's ultimate... Yeah, Ratatasker's damage on the whole isn't quite as good as Tsukuyomi's, obviously. And I think Suk and Bastet are around the same, although Suk can do a little bit more. But he doesn't have the utility of the Bastet ultimate. Like, he can definitely burn Aegises with his ultimate, to be fair. But, he basically needs a Titan's Bane, as well as, obviously, 2 other percent pen items to get through that support aura. And that's a big problem right now. And Suk, again, like I just said, just doesn't have a way around that. He just kind of has to sit there and try to chunk right through it. Gilgamesh, I don't know. He's good with Golden Blade, to be fair. But he doesn't bring the utility that Osiris brings in the form of the anti-heal. So, but he is better at locking single targets down than Osiris. That's for sure. Yeah, locking people down, picking out players. He is really good at those things. But man, those damage nerfs, like, when you really stop and look at how much damage Gilgamesh's abilities do, he really doesn't do that much damage. It's all about the in-hands, and that's something that tends to come online as your build progresses. And some of these gods are good out the gate, or get power spikes in the form of their abilities, and their abilities do like instant burst damage, whereas Gilgamesh needs to sit there whacking on you and just hope like the enemy support doesn't come over and even just give that aura, not even just CC you. No built-in CC immunity either. So, and again, like with Achilles and Athena, slower gods. So a slow god who's squishy, it can be a problem. So I'll put him like there. I would say Arachne's better at singling people out in like the early mid. And like the ultimate cooldown, I think could probably come down at this point, because he really needs his ultimate to single out targets and kill them, and it's just not up frequently enough. Definitely not for the jungle. Okay, as I'm running out of brain cells, let's get to Kleena. Kleena, I just think this god's so boring. She just has a bunch of AoEs. She has some, you can do some fun stuff with the wall for sure. But yeah, she's definitely a bit of a Stompa god, but she's so hard to deal with. But at the same time, she just brings no CC whatsoever, and I really think you need CC right now to help lock down enemies for your team. So you can get in there and try and get your mages, and like if you're not going to be able to do the burst damage like some of these guys can, like Kleena can't really do as much burst damage late game, then you need to set up for your team, in my opinion, which is something Poseidon does, which is something Bastet does. So, and it's because she doesn't bring that, but the damage is still solid early and mid, and you can do a lot of wall shenanigans to catch people off guard. I think she sits there. Surge or jungle, I don't believe in at all. Shiwa jungle is okay, but I don't know if it's, Shiwa we'll just say is D above Bastet. Better early mid than Nike, but yeah, his ultimate's just so bad, I'll just leave him there. Lance a lot. Now Lance I actually played a bunch of at the end of last season and coming into the start of the season. Played a ton of Lance. I think this character's a boatload of fun, and I think he's actually still a really solid ranked god. I would put him in front of Vamon. Now this will surprise people, because people think this character fell off a cliff. I don't think it was a cliff per se. I mean, he's definitely nowhere near as good as he was. And his burst just comes at such huge risks. And like in some scenarios where you're against gods who have very easy stuns, who can just stun you right off of the horse, and it's just like you look like a big joke because you just ulted in on a target, you got stunned instantly, and it, nothing happened. Maybe they can speed up the recovery time in the ultimate. That might be nice. But he could still gank very, very effectively. He still farms extremely effectively. And man, like, if this character gets a combo on you, it's curtains. It's, I would say it's like Pele level, if not higher, of just like, this guy's just going to burst you so hard you cry. But it is a little harder to get off. I think people have definitely learned how to play against this character. I've noticed that for sure. People knowing every single interaction to get you off of that horse or to stop you on the horse. And just shred straight through that shield. What's the best option? Just shred through his shield as well. So you can really struggle with that, but you know, at the same time, the damage is still really all there. It really is all there with the trans and the on-hit items, because remember, he double procs on-hit items with his 1, and of course double procs again because he gets his 3, ultimate 3 again. So yeah, he could definitely bring the damage overall, but it's not quite as bursty as, say, Hubwa, Circuit. Well, Alkwang's more like instant shred, so I guess it is like burst. Um, burst like a Thanatos, doesn't burst like a Thanatos. Well, he does burst like Thanatos, I would say, but at the same time, it's just like it's a lot more counterable, like a Fenrir. But then at the same time, Lancelot doesn't have a Fenrir ultimate in terms of utility. So, okay, I think that was everyone for the jungle. Wow, that was really long. There's actually a lot of solid gods for the jungle. There's even more in this list, like warrior-wise, that you could say, hey, maybe you could play that in the jungle because the character's so broken. But you know, no one I think is really worth putting on here. So this I would say is my final list. I'm pretty happy with the ordering as well. Keep in mind, ordering means closer to the left means better. So. And Kali is the bottom of this, by the way, even though it squished her out. So that's my list. What do you guys think? Do you hate it? Do you poop emoji me? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.